The year is AD 28. This is the 19th event of 55 events that Jesus was involved in this 28th year, AD 28. And this particular story, or this event, is the raising of the widow's son, found only in one of the Gospels, Luke chapter 7, verses 11 through 17. Remember, we're going through in chronological order. We're taking each event as they chronologically appear. And so we need to take a look at this particular story from just this one gospel, and we need to look at some significant events. The first is that Jesus has left Capernaum. In verse 11 it says that he has gone to a city of Naia, and that his disciples and a multitude of people are following him as he goes towards the city. And as he approaches the gates, it's revealed to us that there is a dead man, an only son of a widow who is being carried in a casket. And it says that Jesus saw her, not the casket, not knowing whether the dead man was a young man or an old man, not knowing he was an only son, as far as having been given that information. But we know that Jesus knows everything. So he knew he was a young man. He knew he was an only son. He knew that she was a widow. And when he looked at her, he felt compassion, said to her, "Do not weep." Incredible, isn't it, when you think about it? That Jesus knows all about us, knows things before they're said or revealed. And he has compassion. He can relate to us because he became flesh and dwelt among us. He understands grief. He understands human life. It says then that Jesus, in verse 14, touched the coffin, and the bearers of the coffin stopped right where they were. And he said, listen, he said, young man, arise. So here's the picture. A young man, not an old man, of a widow, an only son, the only source of income for the widow, a man who was in the prime of his life because he's being referred to as a young man, who has already been found to be dead, is told to rise. Well, you know what happened next, don't you? Verse 15. The dead man sat up and began to speak. And Jesus gave the boy back to his mother. What an interesting phrase. Jesus gave the son back to his mother. Fear gripped the crowd, it says. But in the fear, they were glorifying God. And they were saying, great prophet has arisen among us. Well, they were close, but they weren't on the target. It was God that was among them. It was God who had come to visit them. The first advent, God became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory. Glory is the only begotten. It's all very interesting that this is today's devotion, because just today in an email I received a request from a very dear friend's widow wife. And she asked if I would read the events of the last hours of her pastor husband's life here on this earth. And in that account that she had written out for me, she was asking me to read it at a reunion of all of those that are still in this area that moved from Lake Park, Florida to the Carolinas. And to read this to them, to remind them of how her pastor husband had been visited by the angels of God, how he had seen the vision, how he felt God's presence, how he knew his work on earth was done, and how peacefully he passed from this earth to his heavenly home. God felt compassion. God showed compassion to my dear friend whose husband was going to be leaving this world by allowing her to experience and to hear him describe his glimpse of heaven before he left this earth. Isn't God good? God with us, and we beheld his glory. And even when Jesus is not here in the flesh, he reminds us of his supernatural power and his ability to communicate his compassion to us. And that's my thought for the day. God bless you and have a great day.